welcome everybody. I hope you're having a good time. Lovely to be here in Dubai. My name's Mark Acton. I represent a company called Future Tech who design data centers, and I also act as a consultant for a number of other clients. What I'm going to do first is ask my colleagues on the panel to introduce themselves, who they are and the businesses they work for, and then we'll take it forward.
My name is Akshay Saini, CEO for Serverwala Infinite FZ LLC. First, I was thank W.Media inviting for that on this event. So we had talking about for GPUs.
Hi, I'm Rohan. I had the data center and global expansion business for Yotta Data Services. Yotta is one of the latest entrants into the data center industry in India, and we are a AI cloud service provider along with hyperscale co-location.
Brilliant, thank you both of you. So the topic of this panel is to discuss GPU as a service versus traditional cloud. So I think the first question I'm going to ask both of you. GPU as a service is taking off in global markets generally. What place does it have in the vision for the Middle East? Where do you see this going? And maybe first, Akshay, if you can start us, and then we'll come on to you, Rohan.
For GPUaaS services is a very huge demand in UAE. So this is very important for AI computing and machine learning and for rendering for the way companies, AI industries will be there.
Brilliant, thank you. Akshay?
Rohan.
Same, Rohan.
Yeah, I mean...
Sorry, apologies.
So, it's the trend that the whole world is just following. So, it started with the US, now we are seeing it in India. Right now, the whole from India to the Southeast Asia, and I'm sure the same trend will catch up in the UAE and the entire Middle East. AI data centers, AI ready data centers as you call, along with GPU, and all the typical cloud server workloads are gradually shifting to AI workloads. So yes, GPU as a service, customers would want, rather than taking just pure co-location. If a data center service provider provides along with their power and infra, the GPUs along with them, and that is the business model that the industry is moving forward to.
And how do you define the difference between traditional cloud and AI? We all heard of GPUs, we all understand GPUs. We all, I think, understand AI from a sort of a chat GPT and large language module perspective. But where does that interface with cloud, traditional cloud? What's the real difference? And will AI actually replace cloud?
It's not about replacing. I think it is about merging of these two data sets. So right now all the cloud workloads run on CPUs, and they have a certain limitation in terms of the computing you can say capability in terms of the low storage capacity, the speed at which the computing happens. Now if you are don't see any sense for companies that to continue with the traditional CPU, workload as it is, and take GPUs only for AI, workloads. Initially, the migration and everything will take time, but ultimately, when you have a GPU, a company is taking GPU either, AI cloud services, which say typically right now the hyperscale cloud services or a private public cloud services for their application layers and everything the companies are taking. When they shift to AI cloud services or GPU as a services, eventually with time, these CPU cloud services on everything, the entire workload will migrate to this GPU cloud.
Okay, so they're not, would you say they're more complementary rather than competitive?
Yeah, it's just you can say a leap in the computing, leap in the speed, it's a better from an infrastructure point of view. You are just going from a 4-star hotel to a 5-star hotel. Till now there are certain workloads obviously the commerce of it and the pricing and if it will play, right now, like the typical workloads, the non-critical workloads, people will still prefer to keep it in rather than, the GPUs, as long as they are more and more costly. Till now, there is only one, NVIDIA who is making the GPUs. It's a matter of time when, the AMDs and the Intels of the world come in the market, the GPU's price also comes down. So when high computing, servers, typical GPU-like servers are available, the prices are manageable by the companies, it's more economical, then obviously keeping their workloads on, rather than keeping it on CPUs, people will try and upgrade to the GPUs. And it's a more complementary kind of a service where people will like to, cater to.
Okay, that's good. And Akshay, from your perspective, you see the same thing, that interchangeability rather than replacement?
Traditional clouds is setting on for website and web applications, and ERP will be there. But GPU loads, it's opposite to them for heavy load applications and rendering applications, and multiple different things is going on the GPU cloud.
Okay, and what challenges do you see in switching from that traditional cloud to more an AI-based model, more of a GPU-based model? Is it power demand? Is it cooling? Is it supply chain? We've heard about problems in all of those areas, and so I wonder, what challenges you see in making that switch.
So as you said, there are various challenges at the various levels.
Yeah.
First, it is at the infrastructure level, that the entire design, your power, cooling, the way your server hall is designed, the densities of the racks completely change. The design of your server hall changes when you shift from a standard typical cloud workload to a GPU workload. The rack densities from 5-10 kilowatt per rack suddenly go to 50 to 100 kilowatt per rack. So your entire infrastructure design goes for a change. That flexibility and everything in your data center you have to account for. Then once the service provider or the customer itself, whether it is building his own data center, makes those changes in the underlying infrastructure and gets the infrastructure ready to host these GPU workload. The other thing is the server and the hardware and the storage devices, the network devices. Everything is your network cabling density itself, your cable trays that carry the network fiber up to the racks. That your entire infrastructure, not in terms of just the power and cooling, the density you require, the bandwidth that you require when suddenly you shift from a CPU to a GPU workload. So this change, and if your critical load is there, is as good as an IT hardware refresh. If it is due after 2 years, if it is due after 3 years, you have already spent on the CPU server workload. Until and unless it is due for a refresh, people will not easily migrate from or just throw that old server or old network cables and Cat6 cables and everything away.
Yeah.
Because all this GPU things is a big, huge capex investment. Whether you consider the GPUs or the racks or the cooling or the network fiber cables. So capex is one of the biggest thing, as you said. And once all these things are mitigated, as you said, the first layer, the second layer is mitigated, ultimately switching, the software side, the technical side of shifting your workloads from the existing CPU servers to getting the new servers, migration of all your workloads to this is again a challenge, but ultimately people have to do it. If the AI technology and the workloads and everything have to be managed, so slowly but steadily, by overcoming, there are options available for all of these, so that within a period of time, a planning is required, a detailed, say a 6-month, 12-month kind of a whole detailed timeline schedule is required, and companies will eventually do that.
Yeah, and Akshay, we Rohan's mentioned some of the challenges that are faced. The power density, particularly the capex associated with the AI. Firstly, do you agree with those challenges? Is that what you're seeing as well? And then secondly, how are we mitigating them? Rohan mentioned planning, etc. But you can kind of only plan if you know what's coming. And I think sometimes we struggle to really understand what's coming.
Yeah, as said Sir Rohan, migration is a very big problem for traditional to GPU cloud, and for GPU computing, taking too much power is starting from maybe taken the 10 kVA to 100 kVA for each servers. So that's why it's very difficult to move them.
Are we doing enough though to, prepare data centers for this increased power density and demand from AI? You mentioned, Rohan, we're moving sort of from 5 to maybe traditionally 20 kilowatts or so for cloud up to 80, 100, 150 for AI. I mean, how are we anticipating that? How are we preparing for it? Are we preparing for it? Or are we just trying to react to it? Either.
Yeah, so see, it all depends upon what, as you said, what business, the company. So as a data center industry as a whole, it is not an option that, we'll just prepare or we'll design the old 50 or 5 to 20 kilowatt data centers. Whether, it is a hyperscale as a customer that we are trying to serve, or whether it is the enterprise customers, own GPU as a service as we described, each and every business type or model is now moving towards AI. So the underlying infrastructure of data center, the power and the cooling has to be supportive of this new, you can say, design, where your rack densities will go up to 100, 150 kilowatt. The new liquid, the cooling and all these other cooling technologies will come in. So the old, or you can say the existing data centers which were built for a different purpose, they will continue to run. The workload which is there, will continue to run on that. But every new data center that you see now in design, now in planning stage, obviously that flexibility everybody is trying to keep, that tomorrow if a workload comes, if a customer comes with a 100, 150, 200 kilowatt density kind of a requirement, while your overall data center is still say 40, 50, 100 megawatt, the server hall is able to accommodate, the power and the cooling design is such that you can accommodate a 100 kilowatt or 200 kilowatt kind of a rack density inside those same server halls. So whether it is in Middle East or US or India, across the globe, any new data center coming up, you see their plans and designs. Nobody will say that, this server hall will support only up to 20 kilowatt. The data center design is such, everybody understands that, and 100, 200 kilowatt kind of a rack density is the new norm.
And I think you're right. Certainly from what I'm seeing, we're seeing more and more hybrid data centers which can cope with traditional cloud platforms, the full-on learning side of AI, but also the inference side as well, which is obviously something of a mix between GPU and CPU. So would you agree with that? We're sort of, we're seeing more of this hybridization, sort of we get Jensen Huang talking about the AI, gigafactory, but I don't think it's quite that simple, is it? I think we're seeing more hybrid designs in reality.
It's a gigafactory is dedicatedly set up only for GPU cluster and hyperscalers for that. Okay. For hybrid data center, sometimes they have the different hall for GPUs. Okay. Sometimes different hall for colocation services. So for capacity for GPUs, for running the GPUs, this capacity is different. For power capacity or different, and hybrid is the running on normal mode.
No, I think that's what we're seeing generally, isn't it? But going back to sort of GPU as a service, are you seeing, what do you think the proportion is between people supplying that effectively bare metal type platform, the AI platform, the GPUs as a service, versus actually owning the platform themselves? What's that proportion, and how does that break down?
The GPU as a service is the company is not spending money on the hardware. Yeah. So GPU as a service is what they will be what amount they will be paid, then you will be use the services. Suppose, try to understand, they will be using the GPU for 2 hours, so they pay only for 2 hours, not spending too much money.
Yeah. So they're just outsourcing that processing onto essentially a bare metal platform. Yeah.
The lots of company will be doing that, as a Shakti Cloud is also doing. We are also doing that. So what amount? Whether every company has different contract, 1 month, hourly billing, monthly contracts will different ways will be there. So as per client requirement, they will be they want to need H100, L40, A100, whatever he want, they will pay for monthly. Therefore, paper cost will be there. multiple options will be there. The companies and enterprise AI and startups not spending one-time cost on the hardware.
So it's almost like going back to that traditional HPC model, isn't it, where you're renting out an HPC cluster. It may have been based on GPUs, it may have been based on other forms of processor, but it's a similar model reapplied in a new way, I guess.
Yeah, same model we have applied on the UAE. So GPUaaS services for one cluster, we had to slicing the multiple VMs and to be distributing the customers.
Yeah, absolutely. The final question I'm going to ask before I hand over to you for a final statement, starting with you, Rohan, is what proportion of when you're talking about GPU as a service or even AI generally, what proportion of that is the learning and what proportion of that is the inference that comes off the back of the learning? Or does the GPU as a service cater for both sides?
So, see, GPU as a service basically is just an extension of infrastructure as service, as we typically have been doing for years now.
Yeah.
Initially, it's just the power and cooled server hall that we were renting out, say, as service providers. The data center industry, we used to rent it out to, say, software or all these cloud companies. Now, as we mentioned or we were discussing, that the GPU cost in itself, the capex cost is a very, you can say, big hurdle for all these. Hello, it's there for all the basic for all the startups typically and the AI companies and research companies to do the actual research work, train their models and do the inferencing and all these types. So along with the power and cooled infrastructure, what the companies are trying to do is also lease out the basic server hardware. So you, instead of just giving this infrastructure on rent, you put the hardware also yourself, and instead of say charging $50, you just add the additional $50 on top of it, and you are giving this entire, along with this server hall, along with the hardware, for $100 kind of a pricing. So that is GPU as a service. Now in terms of if you have 100 GPUs over here, how much, when I am giving these 100 GPUs to a single company or multiple companies as GPU as a service, at the back end, what those companies are doing, whether they are doing training, whether they are doing inferencing, as an infrastructure service provider, I don't have anything to do with it, or I don't have any, even say I'm not allowed any data for it, because I am just giving my infrastructure as a service to them. Like in a cloud environment, when we give a server hall, what the company is bringing as a server inside it and what loads they are running, we don't have any access to that. The same thing as a GPU as a service, when I have given my GPU to a company and they are running, they are paying me the rental for it, what they do inside that, whether they are training, whether they are inferencing, it is their lookout. When I'm giving AI as a service, when I develop the software layer on the top, and rather than renting out the whole GPU, my GPUs are with me and I'm just giving a token-based service to the customers. That is when there is a understanding that whether I am giving this to you for training, whether I am giving this to him for inferencing. And this is the next level of services that people are striving. That instead of directly just, you can say, CapEx, just optimizing it over a rental model, just dividing it by the number of years and just giving it on an operating model, develop a basic level of software layer on top and just give it on a tokenized basis, a cloud kind of a portal to companies, so that the GPUs remain with you and you can just give it to as an AI service platform to all your direct end-to-end customers. That is the way the people are trying to now develop the more and more services as they move on.
So the workload is very independent, really. It can be any kind of workload that comes in. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So while, as you go deeper and deeper, there are some kind of GPUs which are more, say, better for training, some GPUs which are more better for inferencing. But when a customer contracts with you a particular, say, set of GPUs, whether he is using them for training, whether he is using them for inferencing, he has taken the GPUs and he is running his workload on top of it. So from a model point of view, it is same as a cloud, kind of a model. Just give him the GPUs, he'll use it for his own purpose.
Yeah, so it really is a bare metal service in that respect. Yeah. So really, I think we're just about on time. Yeah, good. A couple of minutes each of you, just sort of a final statement talking about GPU as a service and the development in the Middle Eastern region, and actually globally. Why not go beyond? So maybe Akshay, you can kick us off and take the mic, and then we'll follow on with Rohan.
GPU as a service is a very bright future for the UAE region. There are lots of companies will be converting OPEX hardware as a GPU services, and they will be using for multiple use for one dedicated hardware for the multiple purpose.
Sure. So, as we discussed over the last thing, GPU as a service is the next step that we have moved on, say, from bare co-location. And the next step up the ladder is the AI as a service, where you even have the GPUs, say, a service provider has it with him, gives it on a tokenized basis. And all these CPU loads and everything, while they will remain, because we discussed the challenges that to completely migrate 100% of your load to GPUs. But as more and more GPUs efficiency, comes in, eventually it is a matter of time where ultimately everything is going to go to the GPUs, or a maximum part of all the company's workloads will be run on GPUs. So I think any company now looking for a data center kind of an investment, looking to build up data center infrastructure, this is the whole first thing is the infrastructure has to be designed to cater to the GPU's workload. And instead of just providing pure co-location, at least the GPU as a service is a very good option for all the data center operators. And the final step of the ladder is the AI as a service, wherein you build a basic software layer on top of your own GPUs and provide it on a tokenized basis to your customers.
And avoid that heavy capital cost in the process.
Capital cost is always there, but the recovery, if you are, just pure co-location, the recovery is a little better when you provide GPU as a service. And as you go up the ladder and you provide AI as a service, obviously, the returns and everything increases the value chain as you go, higher and higher.
But you're taking away that initial capital burden for your customers short term.
Yeah. That is the benefit to the customers that you are giving.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen. I think we are out of time. I think we just about did it. Apologies, I was a bit disorganized. I sort of dropped in at the last minute.
No, it was a great session. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Rohan. Thanks, Akshay. Thank you.
Thanks, Akshay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah.